The genie is out of the bottle, and it's going to affect your life. And here with me today to talk about this amazing development is Tom Horn, and with him, Joe Ardis. And let me ask you first, what's the genie that's been let out of the bottle?
Yeah,
Tom?
well, you know, scientists from around the world just met in Washington, D.C. this last week. What was it all about? Well, it has to do with, actually, we'll even show people our little refrigerated container here in a few moments. It has to do with what's inside there, CRISPR-Cas9 technology, the idea that we now have developed a method for altering the genetic makeup of every known animal species, including humans, in such a way that those modifications will be carried forward to all future generations. So we're talking about a very, very powerful technology. It's a very accurate technology. And if Tom Horn can get a copy and bring it to your studio, then this is something people all over the world can get their hands on. People in little bitty laboratories are opening up in their garages are using it. So scientists are very concerned because we're talking about a technology that could alter the future landscape of all known forms of life, good or bad.
Once I realized what Tom was talking about, I felt it in the pit of my stomach. You can feel the fear when you realize that it may not be possible in the very near future to determine whether someone is 100% human. The implications of that are absolutely astonishing and biblical, by the way, because latter-day prophecy speaks of a time when the days of Noah, that is the days when the sons of God visited the daughters of men and produced hybrids, hybrid human angelic species that so displeased God that he had to destroy the entire world with a flood. And Jesus says very plainly it's going to be like that again in the last days. How would you destroy humanity genetically this time, Tom? How would you do that?
Well, of course, you could do it the same way as what happened back then, the idea that something could become so modified as to no longer even be considered to be human any longer. And of course, in this documentary film, we have people that are advocating for that. That's why they call themselves transhumans. And they're working towards a post-human condition. They believe that they can absolutely modify, perfect, and change what it means to be a human. But the question then comes up, also some of the experts in there talking about a term called ensoulment. This is a Christian idea that God breathed into man, and man became a living soul, a receptacle for the Holy Spirit to live in, to have communion with the Creator, right? At what point would we modify ourselves to the extent that perhaps that creature no longer is entitled to ensoulment? It's no longer human in the way that God made it. So these are very concerning, very scary ideas. To the Darwinian evolutionists out there that are also very concerned about this, though, what they're saying is, look, we don't got to worry about the wrath of God. We're talking about altering the balance of nature in ways that could set into motion things that cannot be reconciled. We can't get the genie that you started out talking about back in the bottle
Exactly. And by the way, we're talking here on the basis of the material that you're going to be able to see in this 3-hour DVD set. 2 DVDs just packed with information. The title, Inhuman. Subtitle, The Next and Final Phase of Man is Here. And I think that subtitle says it all, the final phase of man. The producer, editor of Inhuman is with us, Joe Ardis. Joe, you not only worked to bring this thing to life, but you accompanied Tom in a lot of the interviews with a lot of the personalities that appear. And let's talk about some of the people that you talked to. Some of them very, very brilliant people, well connected in academic circles that appear in the documentary entitled Inhuman.
Well, as many, thank you first off, Gary, for having me on the program.
Sure.
As many of the people that will watch this film might assume about some of the personalities, if they come from a Christian worldview, for example,
Yeah.
some of the personalities that sit opposite of that worldview in support of the idea that we're now going to genetically modify ourselves to become a superior human being. In fact, one of my favorite interviews was the one that we did with you a couple of years ago. And by the way, Tom, Gary, in terms of his understanding of the biblical timeline and how it relates to prophecy, the stuff that he said in the interview that we covered 2 years ago almost fits the timeline today as if he did the interview yesterday.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. In fact, I would just go so far as to say that people that watch Prophecy Watchers, that love Gary Stearman, you are going to want to get a copy of this documentary, because Gary really is the standout scholar in the film. I can say things about him that he will never say about himself, but he really is. And the way he put this together was so insightful, foresightful, because what you allowed us to do 24 months ago is today's headlines, and you actually saw it coming and talked about it. But you also, of course, put it into a biblical context, into a scholarly context, and even into a prophetic context. And you wound up being the standout individual in terms of this film Inhuman, which we went across the nation. We've got the world's authorities from the transhumanist camps, from the U.S. President's Council on Bioethics, Hugo de Garis, one of the most famous transhumanists in the world, that says we are going to go down this road and it's going to lead to gigadeath. I mean, he basically describes Armageddon, and yet he's one of the guys helping design the brains that he believes is going to lead to all of our death.
And of course, along the journey, some of the folks that sit opposite the Christian worldview, the ones that are in favor of some of this, we assumed, and I assumed, that when we met them, could they be hostile? And of course, this follows the fact that, for those that saw the first program that I think you've aired last week, they know that Tom came under some pretty heavy attack by the transhumanists who opposed some of his questions, lobbing, social media grenades at him. One gentleman called him, compared him to the Unabomber, and said that, Tom Horn is crazy and all this. But we were able to get sit-downs with Dr. James Hughes, Natasha Vita-Moore. The New York Times called her the first.
She is actually considered to be the world's first and greatest female transhumanist philosopher.
Now, she is very impressive in this DVD, because you actually have a wonderful, wide-open conversation with her. And she's not at all reticent to say what she believes, and you really catch her vision.
Right.
For example, a very graphic vision was that she dreamed of a time when one might be able to control one's skin tone or skin color for cosmetic purposes.
Being able to see through the skin to see the nanobots at work repairing various cells and things like this. But my point was going to be...
thinks
and keep in mind, she's a PhD that teaches at the university level, so she's a very educated woman. She's very up on the sciences and what she imagines could be happening anywhere from 10 years to 100 years from now.
Yeah. And so you actually had an opportunity to meet with
very nice woman too, very cordial, warm, welcomed us into their home, just wonderful person.
But to that end, and this was all I was going to say, sorry, Tom, just very nice people. And that was what I was going to say, is that we went into some of their homes, and I expected, could they be hostile? And they were very warm. They really surprised me. They were all very professional. Natasha took me aside and showed me some tricks that she had been teaching her dog. Max Moore, who is heavily regarded as the father of all of transhumanism, offered us coffee. So it was not what I expected.
So, and when you say transhuman, let's define that for people who may not be familiar with the term. What does transhumanist mean?
Basically, in a nutshell, transhumanists are people that believe we are going to use powerful new emerging fields of technology. So we call them GRINS, G-R-I-N-S, genetics, robotics, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, synthetic biology. So we're going to use GRINS technology to modify what it means to be a human, to perfect. We'll use it therapeutically to cure diseases. We're going to brain-machine interface ourselves with artificial intelligence systems so that we can learn at greater paces. We're going to change our genetic makeup, which is what this kind of technology is all about.
Yeah, and this kind of technology, folks, is what those scientists in Washington were meeting to discuss. And let's pull up this little refrigerated container. This is a common, everybody's familiar with the little ice boxes.
Right.
And what's in here requires refrigeration. And why, Tom?
Well, that is called a CRISPR-Cas9 kit. If people want to go to Google and just type in CRISPR, they'll see this in the news everywhere.
Right.
All the mainstream media outlets are talking about it, science laboratory scientists from around the world. Why? Well, this technology was actually created in 2012, and it's been quietly being perfected from that point until now. Now they're at a point where it's nearly 100% efficient in terms of its ability to be able to modify the genetic makeup of any creature that uses egg and ova, sperm, for procreating. So humans, animals, and you
Now,
can see this.
I'm going to show this to the camera right now. This is a box that has 4 little vials, 5 little vials in it, and something is in the vials.
Yeah.
And what would that
Well,
be?
something alive is in the vials, and so it is a CRISPR kit. It basically is encoded to be injected into the human system. This one's called a gene knockout kit. So the idea is if you were going to do gene therapy, you would use this kit to, put it in layman's terms, to cut, allow you to go in and edit or introduce new information, paste back together the DNA strand, and you've just done very efficient, very powerful genetic therapy. A lot of really good, amazing things could come out of this technology. They are starting soon experiments on cures to cancer through gene therapy using CRISPR-Cas9 technology. So there's a lot of really positive things, miraculous things, things that the church might even get behind and support, right, that could be used for therapeutic purposes. But things that have great power, you see how little that is and how powerful that is, that why would all the major nations of the world right now be gathering their scientists to say somehow we have to put a universal moratorium on the use of this technology? How powerful could it possibly be? Well, there's another technology that's used in tandem with this. It's called gene drive. And what it literally means is you could drive into extinction, or you could drive into existence, a new form of a species that would eradicate and replace all previous species before
You could
it.
change a species, whether it wanted to be changed or not.
That's right.
Force it. Now, and you gave the example of fruit flies that I suppose you've read and or written about.
Yeah, that's actually, if you go to Google, just type in CRISPR and type in fruit fly, or type in gene drive and type in fruit fly, and you'll see one of the experiments that was recently done at the university level where they took a fruit fly, they changed the genes so that now it would turn, it was either red or blue, I forget, instead of its traditional dark color. And they introduced it into a control environment, and immediately these dominant genes eradicated all previous forms of the fruit fly and introduced a new form of fruit fly that was a different color. And what that was a proof of concept that we can use this technology now to drive into existence and drive out of existence however we might want to change.
Does that frighten
the
you?
environment.
Does it frighten you like it frightens me?
It doesn't just frighten me, because here's what the scientists are saying. They're saying it could be used for great good. It could also be used for great evil. If ISIS, for instance, took mosquitoes and created a plague and created a strong gene drive inside these mosquitoes and then released some of them into the Florida Keys, it could be 6 months down the road where all these mosquitoes that are natural, malaria would be the least of our concerns. We could have a new kind of influenza that was genetically created, put it into a gene drive situation. The CDC suddenly is traveling the world because we've got tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people that are sick and dying. So that's the great concern about this technology.
Now let me just say this again. The technology is called CRISPR, C-R-I-S-P-R. It's an acronym, clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats. And I love the word palindromic, because palindromic means it reads the same in both directions. In other words, something can be injected into a series and it'll plug in an uninterrupted fashion because it's the same on both ends, if you will. And it reads the same in both directions. And to me, this really is scary, because overnight you can literally change the genomic nature of an organism.
of an organism, of humans, do it at the germline level, it now becomes heritable. So again, the Gattaca utopian worldview is we could create a cure to cancer and future humans wouldn't even be susceptible to cancer. That's the upside. We could also create modern forms of Nephilim, non-humans, that then become a dominant gene-driven species that begin eradicating all previous forms of life. So that sounds astonishing. I mean, you hear me say something like that, and some people are going to go, "Oh, please."
Right.
Go to Google, type in CRISPR, type in gene drive. Look how scientists around the world are coming together now to say this is the game changer, and it is no longer sci-fi. One other quick thing: this is not the only thing that the documentary Inhuman is about. I mean, we cover a lot of territory, including supernaturalism, prophecy, ethics about future designer children, those kind of things too.
Well, one of the things that I interjected in this series was the fact that God saw those genetic interlopers as the ultimate evil. And their progeny, he demanded to be wiped out. In fact, after the flood, there were giants. There were giants in the Holy Land. And Lord instructed Moses and his followers, wipe out those giants. I don't want them to exist anymore. The same technique that was used before the flood, God says after the flood, get rid of those giants. And he charged everybody from Moses and the 10 spies all the way down to David and Goliath to get rid of the giants. And furthermore, the Bible says the giants would not see resurrection. Once they were dead forever and would never live again. Unlike human beings who by faith or through faith are promised resurrection into glorified bodies. It's genetics in action, Tom. That's what it is.
Right, and when they watch this film, especially when they listen to you talk in this film, but some of the other prophecy experts that are in there too, your eyes start to open to the reality that the Bible is really all about genetic purity.
Yes.
It begins with it. It's the promise of the coming seed that's going to bruise thy seed. And by the way, doesn't that open an interesting idea?
Yeah.
That Satan has seed? I often wonder, when Daniel's talking about they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men.
Right.
But what is it in the end times that's happening? Something that's non-seed is mingling itself with seed, but it's always about seed, right? Seed, purity, the lineage, the whole book of Matthew, all the time that's spent committed to providing essentially the paper trail, the bloodline to the birth of the Messiah.
Wherever you read about seed in the Bible, you can pencil in the word genetics. It's all about genetics or the genome. Back to you for a moment, Joe. Let's go back and talk about some of the people who are pro genetic research. How did they impress you? What did they seem like idealists, or did they really seem driven to do what they were doing?
Absolutely. I found all of them to be extremely passionate, and I think that the transhumanists truly believe that first of all, I think they're way ahead of the Christian community in this discussion. But secondly, I also believe that they truly believe in their heart that what they are doing, the science, that this is really going to lead to a utopia. A much better life for all of us. We're not going to be sick. Natasha Vitamore, for example, feels like if people need less in the future, there will be enough for everyone because their bodies won't require medicine. We won't need to eat as much, for example. If we could tweak our genetic makeup to require less protein to survive through the day, there would be less people, there wouldn't be so much greed. You know what I mean? People competing for the limited resources that are available. It's just going to be this wonderful, wonderful utopian paradise. I think they really, really sincerely believe that. But let me give you a perfect example of about how genetic intervention can oftentimes not be put back in the bottle once the genie is out, like you open the program with. I have a dear friend who is a high-level German Shepherd breeder, okay? She's been breeding these world champion German Shepherds for years and years and years. She was disclosing to me not even a week ago some of the grave concerns now that science has for a lot of these animal breeds. How they're being inbred based on things like color. Superficial things like, oh, I'd like a larger dog, okay? But the skeletal systems don't support the infrastructure. superficial things, what we think are pleasing to the eye, but have nothing to do with natural procreation and so forth. She paid an incredible amount of money, getting into trouble now with some of the breeds that they're seeing today with hip dysplasia, kidneys and liver and so forth shutting down much earlier in life. Lifespans are shorter than they used to be. And some of the folks that were doing these genetic selective breeding programs in the 80s, all the way back in the 70s and 80s, saw a day coming where these breeds could be in big trouble. I would challenge your viewers to go on Google, do a basic search, breeds that are in big trouble: the Golden Retriever, the Chihuahua, the German Shepherd. Science does not have a response now for what it is that's happening to these dogs over time and how to fix it. They bring in a 20-year-old sample from a male German Shepherd from the 1980s in an effort to purify and bring back the pure genetics before this intervention began to take place. And they found that because they're using a modernized host, female dog, that the offspring carried the same disabilities, the same shortened lifespans, the same hip dysplasia, the same diseases and illnesses that are happening now.
And your example,
and they can't go back now. So they're using samples
is a great example of what could happen to humankind. In other words, it's already happening in the animal world, where this kind of interbreeding and genetic manipulation has been going on for some time now. And why not? Because they're lesser forms of life. You know, we can tamper with them, and we can create what we want to. And by the way, Joe has created this book, Dead Pets Don't Lie, which is all about not only the entire animal husbandry world, but it's also about what you feed those animals, and that has been genetically modified as well. So there are two sides to this story.
Yeah, I mean, we actually released the book as a companion to the movie, because we're really talking about genetic Armageddon. We're talking about everything from the foods that we eat to the animals that we care for and that we have a responsibility for in terms of our dominion over the animal kingdom that was given to us from God. And now we're talking about humans. So we're literally talking about an all-out assault on all of creation.
Wow.
A genetic assault, a genetic Armageddon. And Gary, there's one other part. We want to really try to say this before the program is done today, and that is there is also a supernatural aspect to this. Among what we found among the transhumanist camp is there is a spiritual thirst. They just don't want to get their answers from God. They want transcendence, right? They want to live forever and have eternal life, but they don't want to have to get it through Jesus Christ, have to get it through God. That's in the documentary as well. But then there's also those who believe that by modifying our genetic makeup, we could open doors of perception. You mentioned earlier how some animals can see into the infrared spectrum. Well, Nick Bostrom, who's one of the most world-famous transhumanists, just gave testimony before the United Nations. He's written extensively on how perhaps through combining our genetic makeup with animals or certain kinds of animal genes using this CRISPR-Cas9 type technology to introduce that genetic information into our DNA strands, we might be able to open a mode of perception, be able to see into other realms.
Oh, wouldn't you like to be able to smell better and to see better like the animals do, and maybe to have better hearing?
Yeah, but what if we do something else? Because remember Balaam's donkey? The donkey could see into the supernatural world. So one has to wonder if some of the motivation behind much of these experiments, DARPA's budgets and whatever, isn't an experiment to try to somehow make contact. Remember, Arizona State University launched the Sophia Project for that very purpose, to use transhumanism and science to open a gateway.
Wow.
So what kind of technology could we be talking about that could cause what? Some ability to be able to regain the brain's tech that God shut off at the fall, or what are we talking about?
We used the expression "the genie's out of the bottle" at the beginning of this program, but there's another expression that's famous: Pandora's box. Once you open the box, look out. Things may come out that you didn't expect to come out. We're tampering with the relationship between God-created beings, ourselves, and the spirit world. And the spirit world would like nothing better than to corrupt our human genome. The whole Bible, in a way, is that story. If you want to see in absolute complete and all-encompassing terms what we've been talking about for the past few minutes, I would suggest Inhuman. This is 3 hours of the most interesting documentary you're going to see in a long time. Every Christian home should be able to have this, to see it for themselves and to show it to other people. And then you're going to know how to pray, because there's a lot to pray about these days. Corruption is on its way. Inhuman is the name of the DVD set, two DVDs, 3 hours, but we're accompanying it with a package. And this is called the Pandemonium Package. Pandemonium's Engine by Tom Horn. Dead Pets Don't Lie by Joe Ardis. Zenith 2016 by Tom Horn. And Forbidden Gates. Boy, you talk about a timely title, Forbidden Gates. I think we're opening some Forbidden Gates. This is the Pandemonium Package. These 4 books, $69.95, and if you get them, you get the DVD set absolutely free. And that's called the Pandemonium Package. Just check on the online bookstore, prophecywatchers.com, and you can find out how to order. And Tom, you're holding a copy of the September magazine.
This was your September magazine actually has the same artwork from the movie.
And it has an article in it, by the way, by Tom Horn. And it's all about, guess what? It's all about the danger of genetic research that's ongoing. You need to apprise yourself of the facts, folks. Things are changing fast. Speaking of fast, we don't have too many more seconds. Tom Horn, Joe Ardis, it's been a pleasure talking with you today.
Thanks.
A pleasure, but also it sounds a warning for all of us. These are the last days. And I'd like to go out today reading something that Paul wrote to Timothy, 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. We're there. Perilous comes from a Greek word that means ragingly insane, totally out of control. And human characteristics are listed in this warning, about 20 of them. And we see those in society today. But at the end of that list, we also see this in verse 8. Now, as Jannes and Jambres withstood Moses, so do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds reprobate concerning the faith. Jannes and Jambres were priests of Pharaoh, able through dark sorcery to change physical reality. They turned their rods into serpents in a contest, you remember, between Moses and the priests of Pharaoh, a contest basically on who controls the material universe. The priests of Pharaoh were able to counterfeit God's power for a limited time. I think that's what we're talking about today. We have a modern priesthood seeking to change physical reality, tampering in areas where they shouldn't be looking. And I want to thank Tom and Joe for being here today to warn us about things that are happening right now. We're watching, so you keep watching too. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.